My mother told me to open the refrigerator. There's an emptiness inside, and out of it faces are looking at me.
This is another scary story from my subscriber. There are times when stories begin without a hint of the supernatural or mystical, but they end completely unrealistic.
There was nothing that night that foretold a terrible disaster. My mother and I were watching a creepy movie on TV. It was getting close to midnight, but she and I were both going to bed late, and we didn't have to get up for work tomorrow. It's a day off, because it's the weekend. At one point my mom asked me to go to the kitchen and get some cheese from the fridge. She wanted a cheese sandwich. I waited for the commercial and went. I decided not to turn on the light in the kitchen. I was going to take the cheese and run back into the room. So I opened the fridge, and there were no shelves, no food. Only an inky darkness that harmonized with the darkness in the kitchen. I had the feeling that I was falling somewhere in the vastness of space. In fact, it was so cold around me that my skin was covered with goosebumps. Then I noticed flickering, incomprehensible lights in the darkness. And closer they came to me, shimmering with multicolored splashes. I look at them and cannot tear myself away. Because they hypnotize me. Suddenly all these lights turned into scary, demonic faces, looking at me, grinning their teeth and laughing madly. And then the worst part of my story begins. My hands reached out of the fridge and started dragging me inside. I didn't put up much of a fight. Because, although I was scared, but somehow it was fun at the same time. Suddenly, a light comes on behind me, and strong hands grab me by the shoulders and jerk me back. Bam! And I find myself on the floor. I turn my head, and there was my mother, frightened, looking at me. I came to my senses right away. I realized that I was sitting in my kitchen, where the light was on, and there was a closed refrigerator in front of me. My mother and I burst into tears as if on cue. She told me that she heard my wild laughter in the kitchen and rushed into the kitchen. She looked, and I just climbed into the fridge and laughed like crazy. My mother did not see any faces inside the fridge, she only saw food. But my mother told me another thing that made my hair stand on end. It turns out that 20 years ago on this very night my mother and her friends were calling for spirits. And so one evil spirit promised that he would take her daughter in exactly 20 years. And, by the way, the night before, she dreamed of him and told him that the time had come. But her mother didn't pay much attention to the dream, and here it was. So you have to wonder how to joke with the otherworldly forces. And we took the fridge to the trash right away. Tomorrow we're going to buy a new one.
Thank you for the likes. Subscribe so you don't miss new stories.